Hello, book lovers, and welcome to Book Talk Radio Club. My name is Claire Harris, and today I'm talking to author JD Penley. JD is a father, an author, a publisher, a gamer, a car nut, and a self-proclaimed all-around nerd. He currently lives in North Carolina with his wife and daughter, who served as the inspiration for two of the characters in his first book, titled No Peace in Death. Since the first book was published, the Penleys added a little boy to their family. JD enjoys writing fantasy stories with particular focus on the supernatural, such as vampires and magic or immortality. He has just recently published a second book of the Book of The Immortals series titled Undying Love. Hi JD, first of all, welcome and thank you for coming back to talk to me on Book Talk Radio Club.
I'm glad to be back.
Thank you. In the first book, No Peace in Death, we met Lucas, who was born into a life most could only dream of, only to have everything ripped away. Broken and in despair, unable to cope with spending eternity alone, he does the unthinkable. He takes his life. Only instead of the death he craves, he is transformed into a creature of myth and legend. JD, would you like to give the listeners a brief idea of what happens in Book 2, Undying Love?
Sure. So in book 1, we find out that Lucas is not only the world's first vampire, but he's also not human in a sense that he's not from Earth. So he finds out that his origins are not what he thought they were, and he finds out that he's from another realm, from another world that has magic. And so he ends up going to visit that kingdom to find out that his parents are still alive, and that there's a lot more going on his homeworld than he knew there was.
I love the name of the dark sorcerer in the second book, Artemis Bloodworth. I love that name. Now, there's a name you just can't forget. Tell us about Artemis Bloodworth. He has the one weapon that can end Lucas's immortal life, doesn't he?
Yes. So he's essentially waged war against Lucas's family's kingdom on their homeworld for centuries. And so he's kind of plagued the kingdom off and on for centuries, whether it's out in the open or from the shadows using sleeper agents to try and get at people.
Right. At the beginning of Undying Love, you have a quote from Michael Romke, Vampire, and I'll read it. I am neither good nor bad, neither angel nor devil. I am man, I am a vampire. Where's that quote from, a book or a film, and what does it mean to you, JD?
It's from his book, I, Vampire, and, I found it in, searching for, different quotes. I wanted to kind of, set the tone for the book, and I found it, and I came across it, and although I haven't had a chance to read the book yet, it struck me right away that, that's exactly who Lucas is. He's not a monster, he's not a demon or an angel, he's just a man in his own eyes. He doesn't even see himself as anything besides that.
Right.
So I felt like it kind of fit him perfectly to a T.
In your second book, Undying Love, Lucas is now married to Leilana. Is she an immortal too? What kind of person is she?
So she is a character from his younger days when he was still a human on Earth. And they have a rather turbulent relationship in his past before he becomes an immortal. And then through the events of the first book, he has a run-in with her betrothed, and they end up basically in a duel to the death, and she's injured in the context of the fight, and he has no choice but to turn her. So when we see her in book 2, she has been an immortal as long as he has.
Okay. So as a child, my mum used to take me to the library once a month, and I can credit her with my love of reading. But what inspired you to become an author, JD, and write in the genre of books that you do?
Well, when I was younger, I wasn't exactly the most popular kid. I sometimes found myself isolated from a lot of people. I felt like I didn't fit in a lot of times, and so books were kind of my escape from reality, if you will. I found myself drawn to, fiction, whether it be sci-fi or fantasy, and they were a way for me to challenge myself when it came to academics, to try and read outside of my grade level when I was coming up through elementary and middle school. And so they were just something for me to enjoy that was a way to escape the world and the issues that would, go on.
I can understand that. That's exactly why I love fantasy as well. Exactly the reason. As you were writing Undying Love, did you find that the characters were forming themselves from people you know?
So it's a funny question. A couple of the characters I actually reached out to close friends and I asked them, if you could be a character in a book, how would you see that character? And so a couple of the characters that you encounter in the books are actually roughly based on either the person themselves or, kind of an idea we fleshed out together about that character they saw for themselves if they could become a character in a book.
Oh, that's great. What a good idea. One of the acknowledgements in your first book of the series, No Peace in Death, is for your daughter Chloe, and you say, and I quote, "You are one of the reasons why I work so hard, and you're my inspiration for Alice." Who is Alice, and what is it about Chloe that inspired you to write the character called Alice?
So Alice is a character that Lucas encounters during his Centuries Alone when he loses Liliana at one point in the first book. And he finds her, basically when he's people watching, and he sees her staring out of a window at the orphanage, just kind of, staring off into the darkness. Just, the look in her eyes just basically mirrors exactly how he's felt over the centuries being alone.
Right.
And so he allows himself to get close to her after he finally just, stops putting it off, and he decides that he wants to adopt her because he feels like she's the only other person who could understand his pain. So he adopts her and takes her in and raises her as his own daughter. And it's through the years that they're together that she, grows to find out who and what he is, and she learns his secret. And so they basically kind of bond over the events that they've lived through that have made them who they are.
So what is it about your daughter Chloe that inspired you to write the character then?
So I went through a divorce from her birth mother back in, I think it was around 2016, 2017. And it weighed really heavy on her, having to see everything that I went through. And she basically became that character, and I saw that in her. So I basically created that character to almost be an outlet for what I saw her going through.
I notice at the beginning of Undying Love, you talk about the loss of your grandmother and your father-in-law. My condolences for your loss. You say both were storytellers in their own right. What kind of stories did they tell?
So my grandmother was the type that would sit around and tell all of the grandkids, and then when we all were old enough to have kids of our own, the great-grandkids, what she liked to call Tula stories. And these were basically, kind of stories that her mother told her. And so she would sit around and, kind of like you do as kids around the campfire when you're telling ghost stories, she would tell us these stories about different things. And so, it was her telling us these stories that made me kind of want to do that, along with the books I began to read, made me want to tell my own story in my own way. And then, as far as my father-in-law goes, it was just, the way he would tell you, just simple stories about something that happened to him at work. It was the way he was so expressive and the way he could make the most mundane things seem so hilarious to you that it was just, he could take the simplest story, like somebody screwing up at work and turn it into something that have you, bent over, like, dying from laughter for a good 20 minutes over something simple. So, it was the two of them that made me want to do that.
I love that. What an amazing person. You've received some wonderful reviews for No Peace in Death, and now I see you've received good feedback for Undying Love. The book is well written, the storyline solid, with excellent character development. You will have so much fun reading this book. JD, wasn't the reviews or the sales for No Peace in Death that encouraged you to write Undying Love, or do you just write for the pure joy of writing?
Well, it's a little bit of both. Once I got started, it was kind of an outlet to basically let, things out that I was dealing with at the time. And then, I started seeing how people reacted to the stories. And it was just, the characters started developing themselves at that point. It was almost like they were there to tell me the story. So it's become more of a love for writing, and then seeing how people react to the stories that makes me keep wanting doing it. The sales are just a bonus to it.
How many books do you intend on writing in the Book of the Immortals series?
I haven't really set a limit for myself. I think it's just going to be one of those things where the characters will keep telling me to keep writing, and when they feel they have nothing else to say, then it will be time to consider, maybe spin-offs for the minor characters that play a small but significant part in the series, where they'll get to tell their stories.
Lastly, where can Book Talk Radio Club listeners purchase Undying Love, and of course the first book in the Book of the Immortals series, No Peace in Death?
So they are on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. They are in ebook form on the Apple and Google Play stores. They can be found on Smashwords, and then through them they distribute to several other third parties. So you could probably find them just with a Google search pretty easily.
All right, well, thank you, JD. Please come back on Book Talk Radio Club when you publish the next chapter of the Book of the Immortals series. I'd love to chat with you and hear more. In the meantime, good luck for the future, and thank you, everyone, for listening to Book Talk Radio Club. Lovely to speak to you, JD.
Happy to be back.
All right, speak to you soon.
Mm-hmm.
Bye now.